Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Dan Wickline Show. We've got a good show for you today and all this week. We got some great stuff coming up. Today, we are going to talk about the debut and first 3 episodes of Peacemaker. Then tomorrow, I'm going to do a breakdown on the Moon Knight trailer, including why I really wish people would stop saying that Moon Knight is Marvel's Batman, because he's not. There's another character out there that he's much more similar to, and I will go in depth on that tomorrow. And then on Thursday, we will break down the latest episode of Book of Boba Fett, which will be released midnight tonight, my time, 3 a.m. Kyle's time, I think, or 2 a.m. Kyle's time. And so we got that lineup for this week. We got the Experience Expo going on. I know we just had a show before us, which kind of throws me off. I'm not used to having a show before me. But so I hope you guys are sticking around for that and that you stayed on for my show. I did want to mention one rumor that's going around, and that's because it's a rumor that's been going around for an amazingly long time, but now it's gotten this new buzz going on. And it has to do with the fact that a lot of different sites are reporting it, but not necessarily based off of each other. That's the thing with a lot of rumors that comes out, is that one site will run with it, and then everybody else runs with that story and then tweaks it one way or another to try to make it sound like they know something. But the rumor right now that's popping up, and I've heard of 2 or 3 different places that have unique sources, is that Marvel may have cast Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four. And it is exactly who everybody has been crying out for a long time now, and that is John Krasinski. Now, the rumor, though, doesn't come from, John Watts, different Spider-Man director. It doesn't come from them moving forward on the Fantastic Four movie, which they're starting to do, but John Watts is actually working on another project first. The rumor comes from Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and that Krasinski is going to show up there as Reed Richards. Now, if I had to pick how much I believe this, I wanted Rainn Wilson worse than Office reboot ever. How much I believe this, I'd say maybe 25% chance that it's true, because it makes a lot of sense. If there's a lot of rumors right now going on with Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness about them bringing in a lot of unique people to be part of the multiverse. There's talk about how Marvel wanted Ben Affleck to come back as Daredevil, and Tom Cruise to show up to be Iron Man and stuff like that, so that this is what would happen in a different universe in the multiverse. So the rumor is that Krasinski has already filmed scenes for Multiverse of Madness as a different universe's Reed Richards. You got to take that with a grain of salt, but it kind of makes sense. If they're going to use the Multiverse of Madness, Spider-Man No Way Home gave us 3 Spider-Man, but they're all Spider-Man we've seen before. It would have been really interesting if they wouldn't have given us a 4th Spider-Man that we hadn't seen. It just seems like something that we hadn't seen coming through the multiverse. It's just 3 universes that we were already aware of, and nothing from a 4th. Seemed kind of odd to me. So if they're bringing in stuff like, Tom Cruise as Iron Man, because there was a lot of talk about him playing Iron Man in the 90s, or if they did bring Ben Affleck back for a scene, or introduce, because the fans all seem to want John Krasinski, they could have him be the alternate universe Reed Richards and then go on in the movie and cast who they want. Or they could use John Krasinski as Reed Richards. The multiverse kind of lets them do whatever the hell they want, which is kind of a fascinating thing as a storyteller, but a little frustrating as a fan. You kind of want certain things to happen, and then it doesn't, or it goes, in a very different direction. So that's the rumor going around right now, that Krasinski is going to be Reed Richards, or at least a version of Reed Richards in Multiverse of Madness. Again, I think that's probably about a 25% chance. What's up, Kyle?
Should we start a fan theory here on the Dan Wickline show?
If you'd like.
Okay, so if John Krasinski really is Reed Richards, Emily Blunt has to be Sue Storm.
Well, that's been the rumor that everybody's been talking about for a long time.
Well, but they're best friends with Jimmy Kimmel and his wife. So Jimmy Kimmel is Ben Grimm.
Do we get Kimmel's son to play Franklin?
I get behind that.
Because Kimmel's son has been popping up in a lot of places.
It's true.
He played the youngling on Boba Fett.
Right. It's all floating around right there. It's perfect, right? But then do you get, in this universe, do you get Silver Surfer or Human Torch as the fourth member?
Well, you got to get Human Torch.
So if it's Human Torch, then who would you cast in this fantasy casting? Is it Guillermo from the Jimmy Kimmel Show as the Human Torch?
No, you get Chris Evans.
Okay. I get behind that.
Yeah. Just like I think they should make a Thor that's one of the other Hemsworth brothers. Or Tom Hiddleston as Thor in a multiverse, because Hiddleston actually tried out for Thor before he ever tried out for Loki. So, all right. So that's what's going on. There's also talk of Charlize Theron. And I mean, there's so many rumors flying around right now, and you got to take all of them with a grain of salt. Some of them are fun. Some of them are ridiculous. But I think Krasinski and Emily Blunt would be great as Reed and Sue. We know they have the chemistry. So I'd love to see it. And I really like Krasinski as an action guy after having watched the 2 seasons of Jack Ryan on Amazon Prime. I'm a big fan of that show. And he is a thinking man's action hero, which is Reed Richards. So I am down with it if it happens. But it's going to be a while before we find that out. Another thing I'm kind of curious about is, and we're going to talk about it more tomorrow, but the Moon Knight trailer that dropped yesterday, along with the poster and the release date, is March 30th. Book of Boba Fett is going to wrap up. Well, we're 3 episodes in, 4 tomorrow night. So by mid-February, we're done with Book of Boba Fett. So that's going to be like 4 to 6 weeks of, I mean, I could probably do the math properly, but that's a chunk of time again with nothing coming from Marvel or Star Wars on Disney Plus. And unless they're going to announce something suddenly that we don't know about, which I don't think they're going to do, that's a big chunk of time without, and I don't understand why. Marvel's got, Moon Knight, She-Hulk, Miss Marvel, Secret Invasion, What If Season 2. That's 5 shows at 8 to 10, 6 to 8 weeks, taking up the chunk right there. Star Wars, we have the Book of Boba Fett, we have Andor, we have Obi-Wan. So there, Bad Batch Season 2. There's a ton of these shows coming out, and they don't like them to overlap. So why are we getting 4-week period with nothing? Sorry, mustache hair in my mouth. So why are we getting such a big chunk of time with nothing from Disney for our Marvel? I mean, you would think by now, with all of the shows they have in production and coming along, that we'd be at a point where it should just be boom, boom, boom. We had, you know, Hawkeye rolled right into Book of Boba Fett. That should roll right into the next project. So I don't know why. I don't get it. I don't know why they're giving us these big chunks of time. I could see a week or two, but 4 to 6 weeks, that seems a bit ridiculous. So I'm hoping that there's a surprise coming, but I don't think so. I think we're going to end up with a big, it's like when before Loki, there was a big chunk of time between Falcon and Winter Soldier and Loki. I think they threw the Bad Batch in there, but still, I mean, there shouldn't be these big chunks of time at this point. Disney should have it now where they're cranking out either a Marvel or a Star Wars story every week, So, but let's jump over to our main topic of the day, and that is the HBO Max series from James Gunn, starring John Cena, Peacemaker. Probably should put the spoiler warning up because we're going to talk about it. So, Kyle, if you're there, can you put the spoiler thing for me? All right, folks. So, Peacemaker. The character was introduced in Suicide Squad, or The Suicide Squad, because it's not the first movie, the second movie, which is not a sequel to the first one, even though it has the same characters in it. DC doesn't know what the hell they're doing. But James Gunn did the Suicide Squad movie. He brought in Idris Elba to play Bloodsport. He brought Margot Robbie back to play Harlequin. And just down the line, we had Sylvester Stallone do the voice of King Shark, and we got John Cena as Peacemaker. Well, this is a series that spins off out of that. And I know the first question for anybody who's seen the Suicide Squad is, didn't they kill John Cena? Didn't they kill Peacemaker? He was shot, but we do see at the end of the film that he's alive in the hospital. And Hardcore and Economos are assigned to him. Now, Hardcore, of course, is, let me make sure I got that name right. Yeah, Harcourt. Amelia Harcourt, though she called her something different, but is Jennifer Holland, and that is James Gunn's girlfriend, by the way. And then Steve Agee, the comedian, is playing John Economos. Now, they come along, but we get a bunch of new characters in this. And, well, you know what? Before we get too deep into the new characters, let's talk about Peacemaker himself, where the character comes from, and the fact that he's got this kind of odd history. He's a DC comic character, but he didn't start with DC. He started over at a comic company called Charlton Comics, which was later acquired by DC Comics in the 80s. Now, the character himself has been multiple different people. There's been the Christopher Smith version, which we see now, was the first, but then there was also Mitchell Black. There was one that showed up in the Blue Beetle series that we never got a name out of. There was one that was part of the JLI, which, again, didn't get a name of. But Christopher Smith is the one most of us know. And he debuted in a book called Fighting Five. It was number 40 in November of 1966. He was created by writer Joe Gill and artist Pat Boyette. Now, he's a pretty interesting character. He starts off as a pacifistic diplomat so committed to peace that he's willing to use force as a superhero to advance the cause. And that's kind of what we get in the movie. Is he talks about that he loves peace so much he's willing to kill to get it. Now, it's kind of an interesting setup, and the character has never really been used that much by DC. He's popped up in some Suicide Squad books. He popped up in Crisis on Infinite Earths. The closest thing they had to actually using him in a unique way was in when Alan Moore sat down to write Watchmen. Originally, his concept was for the Charlton characters. He was basically using those characters to tell the Watchmen story. And Captain Atom is the big blue guy, Dr. Manhattan. Blue Beetle is the owl. I think Nightshade is Silk Spectre. There's all these characters that line up. The question is Rorschach, which I think is probably a pretty easy one to figure out. Well, Peacemaker in Alan Moore's version becomes the comedian. So the character that gets killed to start the story is Peacemaker. So he wouldn't even have been that much in the comics. He would have been killed pretty early on. Now, recently, it's funny, they actually brought him into the Watchmen sequel, Doomsday Clock. So he is actually part of the fight against Dr. Manhattan, which like I said, I find that interesting that they brought Peacemaker in, being that was the inspiration for Alan Moore's the comedian. But all right, that's a little bit of background, but there really aren't that many comics. If you were, it's like, there was one miniseries back in, I want to say the late 80s that I remember reading that was okay. So there's not a lot of books for you to go back and go, I'm going to read about the Peacemaker. And you know what? You probably shouldn't. Because this is a very different take on it. He's more of it's kind of a loser. It's, and that's, I should say this. I didn't like the first episode. I started to like the second episode. I really liked the third episode, and it got me hooked. And I think the first episode had so much setup and so much giving us a feel for who Christopher Smith is. And the fact is, he's not a likable guy. You feel sorry for him. It's depressing. It's sad. And it's hard to watch. The moments with his father, played by Robert Patrick, it's painful, and the character that Patrick is playing, Augie Smith, is just horrible. He's a racist. He's xenophobic. He is everything bad in the world right now. And then we find out later on that it's even worse than that. But just looking at the first episode, we pick up with him basically being released from the hospital. And he's trying to figure out if he's free. He's talking to the janitor, trying to find out if he can actually go, if the cops are waiting for him. Because you got to remember, he got out of jail to do the Suicide Squad mission. So the odds are he's supposed to go back. But here he is in the hospital. They tell him he's free to go. So he's, grabs his stuff. He's ready to go. He gets into this conversation with the janitor. And the janitor is great. He's an actor that we've seen a lot. I've got his name right here. It is Rizwan Manji. And he plays Jamil. And they have this conversation. And this is where all the Easter eggs start happening. This movie, this TV series is filled with Easter eggs and mentions of other characters. Here they talk about Aquaman. or how Superman's a superhero and Aquaman's a superhero. And there's this whole thing about how Aquaman actually has sex with Vish, which shows you this is going to be a James Gunn movie or a series. This is not going to be a Shazam. This is definitely something James Gunn is working on. So he has this whole scene with him, and then he leaves. He takes a cab back to his trailer, which is painted red, white, and blue. He can't find the key to get in. He's been gone for 4 years. So he busts the window and climbs in, and his shoulder still needs to recover, but he's out and he hurts himself. And as he's sitting there and he has like 300 messages from Vigilante, another costumed character, and we're going to get to him big time, but the crew comes running in, and it's John Economos, it's Amelia Harcourt, but we also meet Clemson Mern, played by, this is Chukwudi Awuji, and then Leota Adebayo, who's played by Danielle Brooks. Now, Mern is supposed to have this mercenary background where he's done a lot of bad stuff, and he's kind of trying to make up for it here. Adebayo, on the other hand, seems to be new, seems to be over talkative, the new girl, but we get to this big twist in part of, I think it's episode 2, where we learn that she is the daughter of Amanda Waller. And that kind of changes everything, because now you're like, okay, so she's kind of spying on this group. And what's her background? How much can she do? And are they trying to set her up as more of the comic book Amanda Waller than the TV series or movie Amanda Waller? But it's kind of interesting. And she's in a relationship. So we get her wife and her dogs, which she dresses in costumes. So she's this very relatable character. And it could be that's her main role, or at least it looks like that's her role in the beginning, is that she's going to be the audience character, the one that we can identify with and get to know and see everything through her eyes. And she might still be just that mainly, but the fact that she is Amanda Waller's daughter really kind of changes things. And that none of the crew know it. You know, she's going by a different last name, and just it's of course Amanda doesn't trust anybody. That's Amanda. So she has her daughter, who may be the only person she trusts, in there trying to watch and see what's going on. Now, most of the first episode, like I said, is set up. Watching just how pitiful this character is, this Christopher Smith character is, how disillusioned he is with the world, how he's trying to connect to his father, and the only thing he can talk to his father about is he tells the story that Idris Elba tells us in the Suicide Squad of how his dad used to lock him in or force him into boxes with rats. And that is the only thing that connects between him and his dad. His dad starts laughing so hard he has to get water. And then immediately his dad goes, well, tell me that's not the guy that shot you. But we also find out that his dad has this interdimensional room or portal you have to go through to a workroom where he made the helmet and the outfit for Peacemaker. So he did kind of, as is explained in the Suicide Squad, his dad did raise him to be this vigilante character. But his dad very much wants him to kill foreigners or, you know, anybody non-white. And what's funny is Peacemaker gets called out on that in the beginning when he tells the janitor guy who he is. He goes, oh, you're the racist guy. Because, you look at you, you've killed more blacks and Hispanics and, than whites. And so there is this racist element going on that you see from how he was raised. Well, they have this meeting at the equivalent of an Applebee's, and this is the first time we get a chance to see. He shows up in full costume. He's got his new costume from his dad, but we get our first chance to see Adrian Chase, and this is a character played by Freddie Stroma, who has been in Game of Thrones and Time After Time and the Harry Potter films. So Freddie Stroma is playing this character, but he wasn't supposed to be. And this is something that I find fascinating. And we'll go into the break with this. Another actor, I believe it was Christopher Cantwell there was another actor who was originally cast to be Vigilante. And they filmed 5.5 episodes before they decided it wasn't working, and they parted ways with him for creative differences. Then they cast Freddie Stroma. And they brought him in and reshot all of the Vigilante scenes. All of the Adrian Chase scenes got reshot. And it's not like, he's in costume, it doesn't matter. No, they reshot all the scenes. So, and that's a big chunk. I mean, we're 3 episodes in, and Vigilante's on screen a lot. So that shows the commitment to the story that James Gunn wants to tell, that he was willing to go back and reshoot all of those scenes. Because a lot of the times he's in costume with the helmet on. You could do voiceover and stuff like that and save the shooting, but they went and reshot. That's according to James Gunn, that he actually reshot all the scenes. And we get Freddie Stroma's first appearance, but he's as Adrian Chase. He works at the restaurant that Peacemaker and the team show up to. And he does this absolutely ridiculous happy dance because Peacemaker's back. Peacemaker's been gone 4 years. This is his best friend. He's happy he's back. And it's just this awkward. See, everything about the first episode is awkward. Christopher Smith with his dad, awkward. The Vigilante, or Adrian Chase, happy that Peacemaker's back, awkward. The whole episode is incredibly awkward, and it continues through the whole first episode, and we'll talk about that when we come back from break. So let's go to break. We'll be right back.
There's something for every imagination at your local comic shop. Visit comicshoplocator.com to find a store near you. Hey
everybody, welcome back to the Dan Wickline Show. We are talking about the Peacemaker The first 3 episodes that dropped on HBO Max this week. Last week. Well, Thursday, Friday. So, but before we go on, let me remind you that coming up after the show will be Black Comic Universe with Amani Latif. I think, did I slaughter his name? Black Comic Universe coming up next.
No, that was right.
Okay. Then Minute to Skim It with Miss Jen and her crew. And then I'll be back with Kyle for In Stores This Week, where we have like 14 comics.
I think I read half of one.
I've read the most. I've read them. So
I skimmed 14 or 15.
Yeah. So we'll be talking about that when we come back, when later tonight. That's at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. So,
and then following Dan and I at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, I had to do the math. We have Ben Humanick, who's an educator who works with comics and teaching kids.
cool.
And following him is Mog Park, who you may know as one of the concept artists behind Game of Thrones, who will be joining us and doing live drawing here on the air on the Experience from 10 to midnight Eastern, or
7 o'clock.
7 to 9 Pacific time, as
Mog-
part of our EXP Expo.
Mog has to be here on the West Coast.
Yes.
Very cool. So, all right, let me get back into it. We were talking about the Peacemaker and the first 3 episodes. Now, they have this big meeting at this Applebee's type restaurant. It's, of course, not called Applebee's, but it's Applebee's. And as we get to know Peacemaker, he's very inappropriate. He's just not raised well. He says things he shouldn't say. He hits on women crassly, not realizing he's being crass. Again, the whole first episode's like this. But we learn that they have this project called, basically Myrn brought in this project to Argus and was assigned, and now this is how the team got together. Well, and they call it Project Butterfly. And one of the best things in the entire first episode is Peacemaker saying, "Are we fighting Mothra?" And it's like, what? Why would you think we were fighting Mothra? Says, well, your other project was Project Starfish, and it turned out we were fighting a giant starfish. So Project Butterfly, because you guys are obviously really bad at naming or really on the nose, and but Myrn doesn't tell him, and that's the thing, is they go through most of the 3 episodes without telling without telling us or him what exactly a butterfly is. But he finds out on his own. Once everybody disperses. Oh, and I should mention that there's his sidekick Eagly is probably one of the coolest things in the entire series. It's this bald eagle that hangs out with him, hugs him, and is voiced by D. Bradley Baker, which is kind of funny. But Eagly's a big part of the show too. And the opening credits may be one of the oddest, most bizarre things I've ever seen on TV, and I can't stop watching it. I watched all 3 episodes, and I never skipped the credits. I've even watched it on YouTube a couple times. It is, if you haven't seen it, you should go watch it. It's a dance number. Very James Gunn. And it's a dance number with the entire cast. Robert Patrick, the old guy that lives next door. The janitor shows up. Just everybody. The cops. Judo Master. We'll get to Judo Master too. But so after the meeting, he tries to hit on Harcourt at a bar down the street. And when that doesn't go well, after she kicks the ass of some people hitting on her, he ends up hooking up with this woman who looks like she's straight out of the 1980s. She's got the poofed up, backcombed hair, the big 80s hair, and they end up going back to her apartment and having sex. Well, during the meeting, he's given this folder that gives him some of the stuff about Project Butterfly. Well, he takes it with him to her apartment. And then after they fool around, she reads the file while he's in the bathroom. And then he wanders around the house or the apartment and finds her record collection, which is all this old 90s or 80s hair battle stuff and 90s rock, and puts it on and starts singing, wearing nothing but his underwear, his tighty whities. He's singing. He picks up a Hitachi magic wand, and if you know what one is, you know why that's funny, and uses it as a microphone and is singing and to the choir boys dancing around her living room when she attacks with a knife. And it turns out she's a butterfly. Again, we don't find out what it is at this point, but she's strong, she's agile, she can pop her neck body back into place, and there's this huge fight in the living room, and then eventually he dives out the window. It's probably like third or fourth floor window. No, it might even be fifth floor window. Yeah, it's the fifth. Crashes on the ground. He gets to his car, gets his helmet, the new helmet his dad's given him, and all the helmets have unique abilities. There's a post-credit scene that tells one of them is really stupid, but all those show episodes have a post-credit scene, by the way, that's a joke. And she finally comes out and he's just getting his ass beat bad. So he gets out there. He has just enough time to put the helmet on and trigger the sonic boom. That's part of this particular helmet, the power with this helmet. His helmets, even in the comics, all seem to have unique abilities. This one's a sonic boom, blows her into pizza, basically. She is just blown apart. It also destroys his car, all the cars around him, brings the cops. And that's the end of episode 1. Him sitting there in his underwear with Eagly flying back down to try to console him. Brought him a rat in case he was hungry, with this pulverized dead woman's body in front of him. And it's like, okay, well, what's going to happen next? Well, episode 2 picks up from that exact moment. He calls Harcourt and tells her that he just had a run-in with a butterfly. It's a mess. The cops are coming. And she's like, all right, I'll be there. Just, And then the bulk of this episode is him going up into the building to get his gear. And while he gets his gear, he also gets like all of her records and starts taking stuff that he likes from her apartment. So he's stealing from her at this point, even though she's dead. Her record collection, her cassettes, some alien artifact that is in there that he doesn't realize is an alien artifact. All of that. And then it is one of the most painful escapes I've ever seen in my life. He goes up one floor because the cops are coming up. He goes up a floor. He hides in this couple's apartment, ties them up, and through the whole thing, the woman is hitting on him and arguing with her husband while he ties them up. He then starts leaping from balcony to balcony down. And every time he lands, oh my God, it feels so painful. You feel for him like he's really hurting himself. And his shoulder is still bad. And by the time he gets down to the bottom and is able to get picked up, the cops have been all over the place. They're now witnesses, the two people. This is not going well. Harcourt comes out with a gun with tranquilizer darts and shoots half the cops just to get them out of there. And when they finally escape, they go back to the base. And meanwhile, all this is going on. John Economos, or Myrn gets Economos to re-register Peacemaker's car because they don't want him tied to it. So he just supposedly randomly puts it in Augie Smith's name, into the dad's name. Well, it's like, why would you do that? Why would you just make up a name or put a bunch of... No, he put the dad specifically. He said, I just had to make a decision. It was random. And, but I have a feeling that's going to play out later on. from there, they go back, they have this big discussion, and he's getting sewn up, and Economos is sewing him up. And of course, Peacemaker is pushing everybody's buttons, pissing everybody off. Myrn still won't tell him what a butterfly is. We find out that Batmite is canon for the DCEU. He's talking about people that he would rather be talking to rather than Peacemaker. Harley Quinn is one of them. And then he mentions Batmite and explains that Batmite is a fifth dimension imp that stands Batman. And I'm like, really? We're making Batmite canon? Which means that since they're from the Suicide Squad was Ben Affleck's Batman. Ben Affleck's Batman had to deal with Batmite? That's interesting. We also get to meet Vigilante, finally, in costume. And their scene is really weird and awkward. But he tries to make Peacemaker feel better by... and Peacemaker's going through this crisis of who he is and who he wants to be. And, you know, he's thinking about the fact he killed Rick Flag in the Suicide Squad movie. All of this stuff is just really getting to him. So they go out into the forest and just blow up appliances that Vigilante's been saving for 4 years. And they have this big guns a-blazing moment. And meanwhile, Myrn sends Adebayo to try to convince the witnesses that they didn't see who they thought they saw. So she goes and tries to, you know, be sly about it. And at one point, the husband goes, "Are you trying to bribe us?" And she's like, No, I wouldn't possibly do that. I'm just saying maybe you didn't see who you thought you saw. He goes, "Oh, damn, I thought you were trying to bribe us. I was hoping for a bribe." She's like, "I am absolutely trying to bribe you." Well, they get called in to do a lineup, and it's a bunch of photos on the table, and they both pick the same photo. Not John Cena's Christopher Smith, Robert Patrick's Augie Smith. Why his photo was in the lineup? Why, you know, I mean, yeah, the car was originally, you know, so they went to him and he wouldn't talk to them anyway. And of course, he did more racist stuff. But this is enough to get him arrested. Well, he gets put in prison and he has a confrontation with an African American, making the guy move. And then he sits there, and then you see this like white Aryan Brotherhood come up and approach him. And you're like, uh-oh, what's going to happen to this old guy? This is not going to go well. Left turn, big left turn. They drop to their knees and start worshiping him as White Dragon. And that is a deep cut character from DC Comics that is basically a racist supervillain. Like Ku Klux Klan racist supervillain. And I mean, that was DC's version of the Grand Dragon, who's usually the head of the Ku Klux Klan. So now all of a sudden, it makes sense why he's so racist, why he's got all this stuff. He's a supervillain. But I don't know if Peacemaker knows. But so that's kind of what we get out of that. So we meet Vigilante, but Vigilante always leaves his mask on. And at one point, he starts looking. We end up with a scene of Peacemaker, Vigilante, and the wife hostage that he tied up is now at his trailer having sex with the two of them. But they're just all curled up in bed together, and he starts playing with the alien device, and it turns into a spaceship. That rolls us into the third episode where they're getting ready. The whole idea is they want Peacemaker to kill this senator named Goff, who they believe might be a butterfly. And they still won't tell him what a butterfly is, but now he's wondering if they're homunculi, little tiny people, and he's freaked out by them. And he even talks about Doll Man, which is another Charlton character. Well, besides, so they call out Doll Man, which is the character that DC got in the purchase. Also, we see that the senator has a costumed security guard named Judo Master, which is this tiny little Asian guy, but can kick a lot of ass. Well, Judo Master is another Charlton character. So in a lot of ways, James Gunn is getting to do what they told Alan Moore not to, is he's getting to play with all the Charlton characters. But the whole thing is that they go to the house to set up to have this assassination of this senator, and he gets there with the family, and they're like, we don't know if the family are butterflies as well, but if we find it out, then you'll need to kill all of them. And he's like, what? Children too? And there's this whole scene about butt babies, but you should watch the show for that. I don't like to explain the jokes, but so they set up this stakeout, and of course Vigilante shows up because he's pretty much stalking Peacemaker. But they're doing this whole thing. They're trying to figure out if this guy, they don't get a clear shot on the senator. They're not sure about the kids. They get in the house. And as soon as the family gets in the house, they start acting really weird. Well, then they get up at like 3 a.m. And while Harcourt and Smith are bonding, then Vigilante shows up. All this is going on. We see them drinking like this honey-like substance out of a bowl, but with these super long tongues that come out. And immediately Murn's like, they're butterflies, take them all out. Well, Peacemaker can't, and I don't know if it's the shooting the kids or if it's, what the deal is, or as he says, there's not a dove of peace on his gun, which he needs. And he tried to draw it on. It didn't look right. But he's freaking out. Everybody's getting upset with him. And Vigilante just walks over, puts his hand on his shoulder, goes, let me try for a bit. And he pulls him away, and he sits down and just very calmly, humming to himself, he starts shooting the family. And he starts with the mom, and he takes out the son, and he takes out the daughter. And then right when he's about to take out what they call Papa Bear, the senator, Judo Master shows up and starts kicking ass. And he ends up taking out Harcourt, Peacemaker, and Vigilante, who are all putting up a real fight. It's not like they're half-assing it. They're really trying. But Judo Master takes them out. And where Harcourt gets far, at least out of the range, but he brings Vigilante and Peacemaker into the house. And while Murn and Adebayo find Harcourt and then go in to try to find them, turns out there's an underground basement, and it's got that alien technology protecting it. And the senator is torturing Vigilante to get Peacemaker to talk, which is hilarious because Peacemaker doesn't care. And eventually he gets the mask pulled off, and he realizes it's Adrian Chase, a friend, the younger brother of his friend. But as they're going through this whole thing, Murn tells Economos that you can't let anybody leave the grounds. He's like, "What? I'm a tech guy." He goes, "I don't care what you do. You have to stop them." So they go in the building and they find the door, the alien door, but they can't get it open. So they're trying this bomb tech stuff, which, of course, doesn't work the first 3 times. And then when he walks up to test it, to check it, it blows up in Murn's face. But the explosion's enough to to help Peacemaker get out. So he ends up fighting with the senator. Now, Judo Master was sent to go tell the words to everybody else what's going on, that they're onto them. And he's trying to get to a car, and he's driving off, and Economos comes flying in with their van, smashes into him, and you see Judo Master trying to crawl. He's still going, he's still crawling, and Economos runs out with a tire iron and hits him over the head. Guy still's going. He hits him again and again and again. So he basically beats the crap out of this guy with a tire iron just to knock him out. So it looks like they're going to have a hostage in episode 4. And then they have the whole fight scene going on with the senator. He's definitely a butterfly because he's super strong. He's able to take a lot of punishment, and he's just kicking their asses. And eventually, Peacemaker gets a shotgun, blows the guy's head off. He gets Vigilante out, and we see the dead bodies laying there. And out of the head crawls this creature with like butterfly wings, and it starts to fly off. And Peacemaker goes, "Yeah, they're really bad at names. Project Butterfly." That's the gist of the 3 episodes. The first episode, like I said, was just awkward and hard to get through. I literally watched half of it, shut it off, and didn't come back to it for a day. Because it just really was. I don't like sitcoms, especially when people are doing stupid things or, it just really sad, The second episode, we got the action of him trying to get out of the building. We had Vigilante introduced, so we had the big gun scene. We get a little more about characters. We find out that Abadayo is Amanda Waller's daughter. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on there. More character development for the other characters. So I was a little more into it. Third episode, a lot of the sitcom-y setup is gone. It is an action story. We still have the problem of Peacemaker, not being able to shoot them. But Vigilante, the character of Vigilante comes across so much fun in this. He almost feels like Marvel's or DC's Deadpool in a way. And the reveal of the butterflies, we then see the screen showing, Economos' computer screen showing potential butterflies. And they're in every nation. They are all over the place. It's a swarm of these potential butterflies. So suddenly you see what this series is about and how it's much bigger than just killing one person. So by the end of the third episode, I was hooked. I think DC did it right by putting out the 3 episodes at once, because I don't think if it was just episode 1, people would have stuck around. I think episode 1 was just too much of a downer. It was too awkward and hard to get through. And I don't know if I would have continued if I was just watching it for fun. I was watching it because I wanted to do this episode today and talk about the show. Episode 2 probably would have got me. At least enough to stick around for 3. Episode 3 is definitely the one that gets you, because you get a lot more character development with the other characters. You get much more progressive in the storyline. You find out more about Myrn. And it's a much better case. So, yeah, if you're going to sit down and watch it, you need to watch all 3. You need to watch the first one, but just know that it's going to be a little rough. Maybe not. You might like to see, you might be a Schadenfreude person where, Christopher Smith's entire life is Schadenfreude. You could enjoy the hell out of watching that if you enjoy watching people suffer. But after the bar scene and he hooks up with the girl, the show just picks up. From there, all of episode 2 is much better. Episode 3 is great. And now I can't wait for season 4 or episode 4. I was a little disappointed it wasn't there. You get 3 episodes in a row and suddenly it feels like you're binging. But you're not. And the third episode is actually not that long, but so much happens in it that it feels like a long episode. So that was Peacemaker. It is nothing like anything DC has done before. It is definitely a James Gunn, but it's a little more mature James Gunn. So if you're a Guardians of the Galaxy fan and want to see that turned up to 11, this will be worth checking out. But just keep in mind, there is nudity, there is language, There is very adult situations. This is definitely an R-rated series. So, but give it a shot if you got HBO Max. I'm enjoying it now. Well, and I'm looking forward to next week's episode, and we'll talk about it next week as well. All right, guys, that is going to wrap up the show. Hey, please, if you haven't had a chance to yet, check out my Kickstarter for Karma. It is going on now. It's moving along pretty well, but we could, definitely want more people to get involved. There it is. That's the Stepan Sejic cover. It is a great, the Michael De Pascal cover. And there's also a Mirka Andolfo cover. That one there. It is up now. It is running for another 17, 18 days. So we have some great stretch goals. We're coming up to a third one. Check it out. And I would appreciate it. Stick around for Black Comic Universe starting next. See you tomorrow.